Welcome to the number 16 team in these deep dive power rankings. We're unveiling the Boston Celtics, the winningest franchise in the NBA, Boston Celtics, the perennially disappointing Boston Celtics, the why haven't they won a championship yet, Boston Celtics. The Celtics are the most frustrating team to watch and analyze in this entire series so far. They have just so many ridiculous, illogical things that they do, like the two big lineup that they ran with Tristan Thompson and Daniel Tice, or Robert Williams and Tristan Thompson. They made me sick watching this last season. So many times their offense would stall and it would turn into Jason Tatum taking the most contested step back ever. They had the worst defensive scheme and philosophy. Helping off their man one pass away. There was so many defensive communications. It was just a mess. In some plays I would see not one, not two, but three defenders helping off their man during a pick and roll, leaving not one, not two, but three shooters wide open for an easy shot. This is the modern NBA, baby. Teams shoot the three more than ever and would rather take a wide open three than a contested layup. You're giving up points with this weird help defense that they would do. How are there so many defensive miscommunications on this team? There was always bad switches. They wouldn't pick up their man on the break, leading to mismatches that could have easily been avoided. They would fall for every single pump fake ever. They'd help off shooters. They wouldn't call out screens. I didn't know what was wrong with this team defensively. Did they not have film sessions? There are so many fixable mental mistakes on this Boston Celtics team, but let's talk about them coming in at 16th. Last year, they had a perfectly even 36-36 record, came in 7th in the Eastern Conference, won the first game in their play-in tournament, and got bounced by the Brooklyn Nets in 5. They ranked 16th in last year's power rankings that I use, and they're coming in at 16th this year. Their offseason was really interesting, while simultaneously not really being. They got rid of Kemba Walker, just knee issues up the wazoo, couldn't stay on the court, was inconsistent when he was able to be on the court. He was pretty good when healthy, had a very good start to the season. There was just too many ball-dominant players on the team, and he just didn't seem to match. But they wanted Kemba off the team so badly, they gave up the number 16th overall pick to get rid of him and bring back the remains of Al Horford. And this is just my impression as an unbiased observer of the Boston Celtics. It kind of felt like Kemba Walker was the linchpin in whether or not the team would lose when Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum were in. When he played well, they generally won because the other two were so reliable. Kind of like what Chris Middleton does to Giannis. Jason Tatum will do what he does, making ridiculous, tough, contested fadeaway shots, ice in his veins, and Jaylen Brown would stuff the stat sheet. If basketball was an empty cup and filling it up meant a win, Jason Tatum would take it about halfway full, then Jaylen Brown would fill it up another third, and then Kemba playing good would make it spill over into a Celtics win. I don't know if that analogy makes sense, but that's what I'm going to use. They also lost Evan Fournier, who was a great shooter last season, 40%. He came up absolutely tiny in the playoffs and consistently disappointed for the Boston Celtics. And just looking at how he performed in the playoffs, he went 3 of 10, 2 of 4 from the 3 in game 1, 5 of 9, 4 of 5 from 3 in game 2. Not bad, a nice stat line from him. They finally won a game in game 3 when Jason Tatum lost his fucking mind. He was 6 of 12, 4 of 7 from 3. Then game 4, yikes, 5 of 15, 2 of 9 from 3. And then when they get closed out in game 5, he goes 8 of 17, 1 from 5 from 3. And I talk about this all the time, but not all threes are made equal. If you make a 3 in the first quarter when you're wide open, that's one thing. If you make a 3 when you need a bucket, 2 minutes left in the game and you're down by 1, that's completely different. And Evan Fournier is one of those guys that always missed that 3 that you need to go ahead that was important to winning the game. They also got rid of Tristan Thompson, and I know he's no all-star caliber player, but I think the Celtics are definitely going to miss his presence and relentlessness that he has on the glass. They also got rid of Carson Edwards, Chris Dunn, Moses Brown, Danny Ainge, and they brought in Josh Richardson on a very interesting contract extension. New head coach Ime Udoka, and they promoted Brad Stevens to the GM position with the retirement of Danny Ainge. Interesting to say the least. We'll talk about that in a bit. But let's talk about this point guard position, where they're going to come in at 29th. And I was just wondering, kind of a thought experiment, what would John Wall look like on this team? I know he's another ball-dominant guy, and the Celtics have had absolutely enough of ball-dominant slashing point guards, C.I.Z., Thomas, Kyrie Irving, Terry Rozier, Kemba Walker. But I'm just wondering what this team's ceiling would look like. How much higher would it be with him instead of Dennis Schroeder or Marcus Smart? Also, maybe Ben Simmons. I know they would never do that because they are rivals, but let's say you cut the bullshit. You trade over Al Horford and like 7 first-round picks, and maybe you get Ben Simmons, the true facilitator that this team has been lacking for so long. And maybe that would work out. But as for the players that are actually here, I had Dennis Schroeder as point guard 1 before I saw this horrifying report where Marcus Smart is going to be point guard 1. Oof, that's wild to me. I've always known Marcus Smart as a 2. a little undersized, but who defends well, and he can handle the ball in case of emergency, break glass. Marcus Smart is there, but for the most part, you don't want him being your primary ball handler. So do as you will with the report. Flip Marcus Smart for Dennis Schroeder. The ranking is basically going to be the same, coming in at 29th. For Marcus Smart, he's so inconsistent when he needs to play make, when he has to do something, be the second best player on the team. He's always been a bad shooter at 33% last year, 53% true shooting. And no offense, because he does have talent. He can drop an absolute dime to his teammates, a perfect no-look pass, perfectly placed where only his guy can get it. In the next 2 possessions, he'll dribble the ball off his foot out of bounds or do a stupid brainless turnover. He's a frustrating player to watch. He can be a good defender. Sometimes he can be a great defender. He's very aggressive, and you take the good with the bad when it comes with him. But for all the good, Marcus Smart's the best defender in the NBA talk. He's frequently out of position. He frequently bites on bad ball fakes. He takes bad switches and has miscommunications when he does. He doesn't call out screens, and he repeatedly berates his teammates for not doing the right thing when sometimes it was him who was in the wrong. I think eventually, and this will be more Marcus than Ime Udoka, he should get relegated to that PJ Tucker role. Go out, defend the other team's best guard, and on offense, sit in that corner 3 and only take open catch and shoot threes or set screens for the other ball handlers. Marcus Smart is one of those players. Don't ask too much of him, and he's going to be great for you when he has a role, when he fits into that position, the 5th best player on your team or whatever. But if you ask him to elevate his game, he just can't do it. He makes mental mistakes, and he's frustrating as hell to watch. Bringing us to Peyton Pritchard, who was a fearless rookie for them last season. I was very impressed with how he shot the ball and how he just didn't care. He had ice in his veins, shot 41.1% from the three-point line as a rookie. Now, eventually, there's one thing that I noticed in his game besides not playing defense and playmaking very well. He's primarily just a shooter, but eventually I'd like to see him develop a push or floater game for his mid-range game. He obviously has no issue shooting the 3, but I think he can follow the Steph Curry approach to inside the arc, where most shots are one-handed floaters or push shots like Rashawn Holmes instead of full-form jump shots that he had a lot of less control on because he generates too much power in his jump shot. But mid-range aside, Peyton Pritchard was very impressive for the Celtics as a rookie. Looking forward to seeing his sophomore campaign. Bringing us to the $84 million man, Dennis Schroeder, who is the most maligned, mocked, and insulted player in the NBA, and for good reason. But as for the player, he's a pretty good backup caliber point guard. He's a decent scorer, gave you 15, 3, and 6 last year, and can be a primary ball handler if he's not asked to do too much. He's pretty quick, and he's very smart with the ball. He's not elite, but he's definitely an above average decision maker. He's not a great defender, and he had a very inconsistent year last season, but he suffered from COVID. He played alongside LeBron and Anthony Davis, so his usage rate cratered, and his role was kind of undefined out there on the Lakers squad. He was just feeling out his way, figuring out where he fits in with LeBron James, who's one of the more difficult players in the league to play alongside with, especially if you're a primary or secondary ball handler. So I don't blame the stats last year. I think he's going to have a good bounce back year, and he's definitely going to have a chip on his shoulder. He's going to look to prove everybody wrong. Hopefully he plays well, and hopefully he gets his money. Bringing us to the wing players, and I really hope I'm wrong here with this lineup projection. Maybe they'll have Josh Richardson play at the 2, or Aaron Nesmith, Jaylen Brown at the 3, Jason Tatum at the 4. They've done traditionally so, but seeing how they're going to start Marcus Smart, seeing how they give up a first-round pick for Al Horford, and seeing how they have this weird love affair with this guy who's 35 years old and isn't cut out for the modern NBA, I'm horrified at the prospect of them playing Al Horford at the 4, Robert Williams at the 5, running a double big lineup. But let's talk about Jaylen Brown, who is a stud, bringing in the 6th ranking at the shooting guard position. The dude is great. He's been improving year after year, already made it to an all-star game last season. Shooting is much better, usage rate is up. He's the poster child of draft comparisons when a guy is freaky athletic, limitless potential, but just isn't there yet. Can't shoot, can't play make, etc. Just needs time to grow. He's an okay passer, struggles a bit when he's driving and trying to play make, and he'll get caught jumping in the air without a decision of where he wants to go with the ball. And I'd like to see him work on his mid-range game. As we saw in the finals, a good mid-range game is deadly. Too often his only game is pump from 3, drive hard to the paint, Euro step awkwardly, and then throw up a weird circus shot. And he'd often make it more often than not, which was impressive in its own. But I'd like to see a more repeatable second option for him to fall back on when it's just not there. He's not a great playmaker yet. He had an ugly 3.4 assist to 2.7 turnover ratio last season, but he's a good slasher and shot very well from 3 last year at almost 40%, 24 points a game, 6 rebounds, 58% true shooting, and a 20 PER, 4.8 win shares. The dude is legit. He's only getting better. He's only 24 years old, and he's one of those players that we have hindsight now of what happens if they traded away Jaylen Brown for Anthony Davis, for James Harden, and it looks like it was the right decision to keep him here, lock him up, and he's going to be a major franchise cornerstone alongside Jason Tatum for the future. Talking about Jason Tatum, he's going to rank as the second highest small forward I have in these power rankings. Now, what's there to say about Jason Tatum? The dude is legit. 26 points a game last year, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 38% from the 3, 57% true shooting, 21.3 PER, 6.5 win shares. The dude was great. Played in the Olympics, brought home a gold medal alongside Kevin Durant. Now, if I was to nitpick here, which is what we sports fans do, he does have a little too much ISO. Maybe that's on him. Maybe that's on the offensive system they ran. But a lot of possessions would end up with him dribbling the air out of the ball, taking a mean step back, taking a really low percentage shot that was heavily contested. And he's so good, he would make it at a good rate, but the shot selection itself was poor. He loves to make his own shots more difficult too for almost no reason. He'll step back into a harder, more contested shot, not drive with the defender on his hip, and fade away unnecessarily. With J.R. Smith retired, I'd say Jason Tatum right now is the best bad shot maker in the NBA, maybe tied with Zach LaVine. The difference is Zach LaVine does it out of necessity because last year's Bulls were ass, while Jason Tatum takes them on purpose. He struggles with contact finishing, and as you've noticed in this offseason, there's tons of pictures of him trying to bulk up just because that was one of his major criticisms. People want to see him drive harder to the paint. People want to see him get more James Harden-ish when he drives, draw fouls, and get to the free throw line or learn to kick to the open shooter. Now, B-Ball Breakdown talked about this a little bit in his Celtics video, which I highly recommend, but Jason Tatum doesn't see the floor very well. Coach talked about him keeping his head down when he drives, also leading to him not reading the defense and the big man dropping on the pick and roll. I also saw him basically turn his brain off while running a play, saying, okay, the ball goes here, and then he stops reading the defense, staying aware or picking it apart when someone comes open on a broken assignment or a wide open cutter or a shooter on the far side that was left alone. Now, Jason Tatum is good. He's very good, maybe even elite. I'm just not ready to call him the second coming of Kobe, the next LeBron, the next face of the NBA. I'm just not quite sold on him yet to be a number one on a championship team. Now, hot take from me, Jason Tatum is a great shooter, especially taking those contested shots with the hand in his face, but he is a bad playmaker and a poor creator at this point in his career. Now, these nitpicks aside, all respect to Jason Tatum. Once Jaylen Brown went down with that wrist injury, it was literally the Jason Tatum show in Boston, especially with Kemba sitting out, unsurprisingly in the playoffs, and the dude got you a game from a healthy big three. Kind of Allen Iverson-esque against the Lakers. That's just how good Jason Tatum was. He has so much smoothness to his game, and don't forget, he caught COVID and struggled with the recovery. He had to use an inhaler for a time. So imagine that Jason Tatum is going to be even better this upcoming year. Now on to Al Horford. Al Horford. Honestly, I think the Celtics are going to start him, which is why I have him in this power forward 1 position. There's some sort of weird thing that the Celtics have that they like him so much. He wasn't awful last year for the Thunder. He shot the 3 well, 36.8%, 14 points, 6.7 rebounds, 3.4 assists. He still defends as good as he can at 34 years old and has that ridiculous long wingspan that bothers shots. I have this sickening feeling in my gut that they're going to run another double big lineup and start Al Horford and Robert Williams at the same time. In the olden days in the NBA, he'd slide right in. This power forward position is his natural spot, but this is the modern NBA 2021. There's 4 wings and 1 big, and Al is both regressing as he gets older and can be exploited by quicker players. If the Celtics do run the double big lineup like I fear they might, this could get ugly. Regardless of where he plays, Al Horford is going to bring good veteran experience and leadership to the Celtics. Moving on to this center position where they've been hunting for a long, big, rim-protecting, lob-catching center for a while now. They've been saddled with Al Horford, Daniel Tice, Aaron Baines, Enes Kanter, Luke Kornet, Kelly Olynyk. And I'm just wondering what would have happened if they didn't hate Kemba Walker so much that they could have kept their first-round pick, taken Isaiah Jackson or Trey Murphy or Kai Jones with this pick. They also are incredibly lacking at a true point guard position. Maybe they could have picked up Sharif Cooper. But let's talk about Robert Williams. I'm a big fan of his. When a young guy balls out in the playoffs and shows some signs of stardom, you just know that he has game. It happened to Lou Dort out in the bubble playoffs against James Harden, and it happened to Robert Williams last year against the Nets. He is legit. He has a ridiculous 40-inch vertical. It's rumored that he can jump 12 feet in the air, and it's just yet to be seen how good he is. He still hasn't played enough games, but look at that PER, 25.7 last season, 72% true shooting. The dude is crazy. Biggest red flag on him, though, is that he has an injury history and can't shoot the 3 and is a little undersized. Another one of those 6'8", 6'9" centers that are going to play hard, be very athletic, but just not tall enough to affect those big bodies that are out there like Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. On to the backup center position. They brought back Enes Kanter. The legend is back. The offensive rebounding guru is back. He's a decent player these days in today's modern NBA. He's not very athletic. He doesn't rim protect. He can't shoot the 3. He's a natural 2000s, 2005 power forward. He's not a bad player. I mean, evidenced by his 11 and 11 stat line last year. Just the NBA has passed guys like him by. He's a defensive liability and is too undersized to guard big, strong centers, so he's kind of lacking a position. That said, he's going to fill that Tristan Thompson kind of role on offense. There's going to be a little bit of a problem on defense, but of course, Robert Williams is a block machine, and we'll see what Bruno Fernando has there at the center 3 position. A little bit interesting because he got beat out by rookie Onyeka Okongwu last year, and in some of the rotations where Clint Capella was hurt, instead of starting Bruno Fernando, they started 6'6" Solomon Hill at the center position. Just not a great look for him. Hopefully a fresh start for this kid is exactly what he needs. He's only 23, has limitless potential. He just needs to put it all together. Moving on to their bench position where they're going to come in at 14th, starting with Aaron Nesmith, the rookie. He struggled early last season, and I don't blame him. Last year was rough for rookies with COVID, limited practices, limited training camps, limited preseason, but he came on a little bit late in the year as a spot-up shooter and decent defender. He played hard, hustled his ass off, and really earned those minutes. Also, they picked up Josh Richardson, a really, we'll say, interesting pickup. For starters, he's on a decent, friendly contract, I believe $10 million, somewhere around 10, 11 million. And they think that they're going to be able to package him and somebody else to make a good trade and bring in that third option, that third player that's going to pair alongside Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. As for Josh Richardson himself, he's good depth. He had a bit of a down year last year, but he's still a decent defender. Brad Stevens believes he'll be a better shooter last year. He only shot 33%, hence giving him the contract extension. Good luck, I guess. I prefer to see players on a prove-it deal instead of a, gosh, I hope he plays better deal, but it's not going to tank the franchise, and maybe they'll just end up trading him away. Romeo Langford, inconsistent, but he's definitely got talent. We're kind of hoping for a Robert Williams-esque revelation from him. He has the potential to be a very solid two-way guy off the bench. Grant Williams is still here. He's a big boy, can shoot the 3. He's an undersized 4, kind of another guy without a position, not fast enough to be a wing, too short to be a 5, but he does have the ability to shoot the 3, stretch the floor, which will earn him time on the court, and he tries hard on defense despite his lack of athletics, which is all you can ask from your depth players. Jabari Parker, he's still here. Yikes. They brought in Juan Hernan Gomez, and for whatever reason, people who don't watch basketball think, oh my God, the Hernan Gomez brothers, I really like him. He's a very good player. He's okay. He wasn't great last year in Minnesota. Had some issues with management, him wanting to play in the Olympics, management not, and he had a really bad shooting year. Again, like Josh Richardson, you expect that to go up, I guess. But at the very least, he's going to be a big shooting, big-ish man, 4'5" player at 6'9", career 35% three-point shooter. Unsure if he's going to be a small ball 5 or a 6'9" oversized wing, backup depth to Jason Tatum. They also have Luke Cornett and Juwan Morgan on exhibition contracts. Maybe one of them will make the roster. Luke Cornett did play for them last year. He was okay for them. They also have Sam Hauser on a 2-way deal. I was actually really high on this guy, way ahead of Joe Wieskamp, who went to the San Antonio Spurs. He's a professional shooter. He went to Virginia, so he didn't lift a single weight in his life, but he's a good shooter. My blurb on him is, Hauser is what we call in the business a professional scorer. He has a quick release and a sweet 3. He's able to put the ball on the floor to dribble past a closeout and pull up from mid. Outside of that, he doesn't do much. He can't dribble, doesn't drive, can't pass, but he can put the ball in the hoop. He doesn't have great foot speed, but he tries on defense and will generally stay in front of slower wings. He's often in the right position but lacks strength because Virginia sucks at weightlifting, and he's prone to the blow-by, but that's not where his focus is. He's going to go out there and shoot 40% from 3 for you. On to the coach and culture ranking, where they're going to come in at 14th, and you'd think the coach and culture ranking of the venerable Boston Celtics would be higher. They've been so inconsistent, controversial, and just lacking in winning lately. And I'm not really sure how I feel about Brad Stevens failing upwards. He was likely to be fired at the end of last year after yet another disappointing season with significant scheming and roster mistakes. I'm torn on Danny Ainge's legacy. On one hand, he schooled the Nets and was the first GM to hoard first-round picks for like 8 years, a trend which we see the Pelicans, Rockets, and Thunder now implementing. On the other hand, he failed to win a championship with the recent squad and make that push-you-over-the-top move, not trading for Anthony Davis or Jimmy Butler or whomever. You look at the difference between what Masai Ujiri did and Danny Ainge. The Raptors pushed their chips to the middle and said, let's go win a fucking chip this year. But then again, he did pull off the first big 3 in the NBA, won a chip with KG, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce. But then they also stole Kyrie Irving and were at the very least top contenders for the championship. I'm sure one Gordon Hayward injury and one less Illuminati meeting for the Kyrie Irving, and they at the very least make the finals. But at the very least, Danny Ainge is a respected man in the NBA going into the Hall of Fame. And now Brad Stevens picked up Ime Udoka, first-time head coach assistant of the Brooklyn Nets. He seems like a good guy. He says all the right things. He worked under Greg Popovich, which is good, I guess. People keep using this as a selling point, saying, oh, he worked under a good coach, so that means he's going to be a good coach. Look at other coaches under Greg Popovich. They're pretty good. Yeah. And I always say this for almost any new hire. There's no salary cap at hiring a head coach. I'd like to see a top 5 head coach get hired away from an existing job to a team that's in win now mode like the Celtics. Go give Ty Lue $20 million a year. Go steal Nick Nurse or Steve Kerr away from their franchises. I don't dislike Ime Udoka, but rookie coaches also make rookie mistakes, and this team that has 2 generational talents waiting to take that next level of success shouldn't be waiting on some guy to learn how to coach. But this head coach GM culture looks to be okay. Brad Stevens was a very good X's and O's guy and had trouble motivating and influencing his players, and that's what we assume Ime Udoka is going to bring to this franchise. Hopefully the new front office and coach mesh well with the team. They are owned by Wycliffe Grusbeck. Not much to say about him. He's a decent owner. Doesn't go too far over the cap, but he hasn't had to in recent years. Bringing on their win projections this upcoming season, where they're projected at a little over 546.5 wins, 40-1 championship odds. Season results are 5th seed in the East, 1st or 2nd round exit. And honestly, I think the Celtics are one trade away for either a big or little, a Karl Anthony Towns or a Ben Simmons, or they're one Jaylen Brown turning into an all-NBA player alongside Jason Tatum away from competing for the championship. They're close. They're so close that you can almost smell it, which is why they keep making these win now moves, bringing in Kyrie Irving, bringing in Kemba Walker. They're right on the doorstep of winning the championship. They just need one more move. If the Celtics run a Dennis Schroeder, Aaron Nesmith, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Robert Williams lineup, though, I am in on this team. I think that has enough star talent to at the very least compete for a top 4 seed in the East. Then their backups can be Peyton Pritchard, Marcus Smart, Josh Richardson, Juan Hernan-Gomez, Al Horford, and then sub in Grant Williams and Jabari Parker as needed. But if they run anything like Marcus Smart at the point, or Al Horford, or run another double big lineup for the fucking 50th time, I'm going to lose it and I'm out on this Celtics team. I don't care how good Jason Tatum is. And that is the Boston Celtics once again coming in at the 16th spot. Let me know what you think, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and I'll catch you in the next one where we unveil the 15th ranked team.